Good evening, everyone. Thanks all for being here. Mal is still streaming, so I think he'll be another couple of minutes. So that may delay some people who are coming over from that stream. But all, thank you for being here. Let me just double check that I am streaming. Yes, and everything seems to be running just fine. So welcome, everyone. Thanks. Today is the final episode of Darwin, Scientific Evil. Kill thy neighbor. All very appropriate terms for Darwin. Welcome XYZ, Simon said, Mick M, Yakov, welcome. So good to see you all. All right. So I hope this series has been enlightening. You've seen the genuine depravity, the murderousness, the genocidal glee that proponents of Darwin and Darwin's ideas have acted in the world with such psychopathic glee. Rick Amstead, welcome. You've seen how they are talking about post-birth abortion. You've seen how they're talking about it's okay to rape people who are not mentally fully there. Dino Dennis, welcome. Ben Yosef, hey, welcome. I saw your comment on the talk today on the Catholic channel. Can't remember the name. You just became a subscriber. I've been a subscriber there for years. Vegetal, welcome. Good to see you. And XYZ, always good to have your support. John Florence, welcome. So hopefully you've all seen now that Darwinism is evil. It is based on paganism. It is irrational. It's Islamic in many ways. It parallels Islamic thought. So how can it be scientific if it is so close to irrational, insane pagan ideas as well as Islamic ideas, as we saw last week? Mimi Bibi, welcome. And Dragon, good to see you. Right, so we ended up just a couple of slides after this where life is a burden if people are not perfect. And the non-perfect, as they stated, had to die. You cannot hear me? Can everyone hear me? Just give me a 1 to let me know that everyone is capable of hearing me. Testing, yeah. Yeah, everyone's hearing me, so yeah, my audio is going through correctly, everyone. All right, excellent, thank you guys. So it's just, yeah, some issue on your side then. All right, yeah, because I've worked really hard to make sure I don't mess up because I've done it so often. Brother Meated, welcome. Thank you for the support. Ruth Naomi. Okay, so we were here. Right, then I'll just go through this slide again for context. This is where we ended last week. This slide is the one just after. This is Madison Grant. This is his book, The Passing of the Great Race, or The Racial Basis of European History. So he extolled the Nordic race and bemoaned its corruption by Jews, these black people, and Slavs and others, which is why, of course, amongst other things, Hitler wanted to wipe out the Slavs. He wanted to wipe out those who were not fair-skinned and, of course, the Jews. We are familiar with that. Adolf Hitler wrote him fan mail. Tom Yokai, welcome. Lilo Mine, welcome. And of course, in The Passing of the Great Race, Grant wrote, mistaken regard for what are believed to be divine laws and the sentimental belief in the sanctity of human life tend to prevent both the elimination of defective infants and the sterilization of adults, as are of no value to the community. So Darwinism, as we have seen, devalues human life. It makes it okay to kill those that you think are not good enough. So who makes that determination? Cheryl Eunice, welcome. Of course, the laws of nature require the obliteration of the unfit. He is paralleling what Darwin said. These are exactly the same things that Darwin implied or stated himself. So Darwin was the original social Darwinist. He was going to create the utopia using science. So this is where atheism has led us. This is where atheism took us, and it led to the greatest genocides in world history. Human life is valuable only when it is of use to the community or race. That is also very much a communist idea. That's utilitarianism. So this takes us back to sadly, the atheist utilitarianism, the philosophy that was in the 1800s. So now you see that atheist philosophy is murderous. It is utterly depraved and evil by any objective measure. Kathy Hopkins, welcome. I finally made another live stream. Blessed day to you all. Yeah, to you too. RGP, yes, that is really dark. And this has been the statements of Darwinists. We're talking people with PhDs, people who are respected in history, people who've been influential in history, in government. And of course, all of them sought to have influence in government. This is the standard view of Darwinists. Darwinism and social Darwinism this is social Darwinism. This is where Darwinism leads to murder. And it has nothing else. Carno Spiros, president of the One Tooth Society. Interesting. I've been watching it for a while. First time live from Albania. I'm not Albanian, I'm Irish. Okay, Connor, yeah, with that name, yes. Ben Yosef, good. Okay, so in the fan mail, Adolf Hitler called Grant's book his Bible. So this book was his Bible that called for the extermination of the inferior races and people who did not measure up to whatever measure they had of perfection. So this was permission to kill thy neighbor. Sheikh Biadi, welcome. Fan mail from Hitler was not a good thing. Hopefully he learned that during his life. Oh, by the way, I am making this available. Let me just publish this. Okay, so for the duration of the stream, I'm going to make this particular presentation available to you. I'll drop this in the chat. So it is 143 slides. And so my largest slide decks like this, like monotheism, I made it $25 for the duration of the stream. I'll make it $5. For those who want to pick it up, I'll make it $5 available to you so that you can pick it up really cheaply for the next little while. So I only have about 8 or 10 slides to go, so it's not a very long stream today. So thank you for telling us the truth about the idolaters and man-made stuff. I see you. Thank you very much, Sharon. All right. Yeah. Now, this book was the first foreign book published by the Nazis because the Nazis bought into this idea. They were all of them Darwinists. Revolutionary bliss. Welcome. So Fred Hoyle, we spoke about him. I'll repeat this. The likelihood of the formation of life from inanimate matter is 1 to a number with 40,000 noughts after it. It is big enough to bury Darwin and the whole theory of evolution. There was no primeval soup, neither on this planet nor any other. And if the beginnings of life were not random, they must therefore have been the product of purposeful intelligence. And this is an atheist speaking. He didn't want to embrace God, but he admitted that we don't have, from an atheist perspective, an answer to this. Islamic origins, hey, welcome. So therefore, we have to consider the possibility that God made it. Once we see, however, that the probability of life originating at random is so minuscule as to make the random concept absurd, it becomes sensible to think that the favorable properties of physics on which life depends are in every respect deliberate. It is therefore almost inevitable that our own measure of intelligence must reflect higher intelligence, even to the extreme idealized limit of God. Right, so he's a well-known British astronomer. Controversial, but yes. So this is not a discussion on the scientific aspects of Darwin's theory, right? We're talking about the social, moral implications of Darwinism, and Darwinism is, as you've seen, depraved. It is evil. Now, this is one of the major sources for the for this video series that I've made. This is Darwinism and the Origin of World War I, the Biology of the Second Reich, Social Darwinism and the Origins of World War I. Well worth watching. So this is one of the sources that I have been using for this. Let me continue. Right, so let's talk about this guy here and his book. So this is a biologist. This is one of his books called American Insects. So he was a famous author, biologist, scientist, and of course he supported Darwin, right? World War I left more than 16 million people dead. Now, many reports calculate double that. Many reports calculate 28 million, 30 million dead. So 16 million is a conservative number for how many people have been killed by World War I. More than 20 million people were left wounded, and Europe was devastated by destruction. It was an incredibly brutal war. World War I was influenced by a rabid, atheistic militarism claiming to be based on science. Now, this is an aspect of science, this is an aspect of history that we've not been told. You know, we talk about, well, you know, someone shot Kaiser Wilhelm and, you know, as revenge, the Germans said, oh my, we've got to do something. No, there's a lot more to the story. We looked to the late 1800s. We looked to where Germany was going in its mindset. Now we're going to look a little deeper into that. and see that World War One is very much related to Darwin, and it's because of Darwin's ideas. The leading German intellectuals argued that war was necessary, right? War was a necessity for evolution, a natural part of the Darwinian struggle for survival. So hold on, intellectuals, German intellectuals, first world people, argued that war was a necessity, a natural part of the struggle for survival. So war was good. And this is science. Don't forget, atheists are always pushing science. Well, this is the alternative that they are presenting. This is the atheist alternative. Murder is the atheist alternative. In 1914, the armies of the Second Reich overran Belgium. They were pressing into France. Yeah, it's always the Germans, isn't it? So for those who want the slides, I've just dropped the link again in the chat. Millions of Belgians were threatened with famine. So American businessman Herbert Hoover, you'll know him as the guy who founded the FBI, he organized humanitarian relief to prevent mass starvation. And a man called Vernon Kellogg, this guy here, Vernon Kellogg, he was director of the American Commission for Relief in Belgium. He was an evolutionary biologist at Stanford University. He was a very strong proponent of biological evolution, so he supported biological evolution. However, he eventually became very, very concerned, extremely concerned and troubled at the evolutionary views of the Germans, or shall we say the Darwinian views of the Germans. Now, Kellogg was housed with German officers at the German Supreme Command in Belgium and France. He regularly had dinner discussions with them on what they called the battle for survival of the fittest. Now, we've seen this term occur constantly. We've seen Darwinian intellectuals discussing this in the context of murder, mass genocide, and warfare. Tiger, welcome. So, and these discussions he wrote in his memoirs lasted long into the night, and he said it was extremely disturbing. He wrote, the discussions would start at dinner and last long into the night. Always we talked and tried to understand one another to get the other man's point of view. Their point of view does not permit a live and let live kind of carrying on. It is a point of view that justifies itself by a wholehearted acceptance of the worst of neo-Darwinism. This is the book here, Headquarters Nights, right, by Vernon Kellogg. And he writes here, the Allmacht, the omnipotence of natural selection applied rigorously to human life and society. So he says, it is a point of view that justifies itself by a wholehearted acceptance of the worst of neo-Darwinism. The Allmacht of natural selection applied rigorously to human life and society. So the Germans in World War I were applying natural selection to human life and society. The slaughter of World War I was Germans applying Darwin's atheistic science. Remember, 91% of atheists identify as Darwinists. They believe in Darwinism. No, they don't believe in Christianity. They don't believe in God. They believe in Darwin. They believe in Darwinism. And this is Darwinism applied. World War II, guess what, was also Darwinism applied. Anela, welcome. So the Allmacht of the omnipotence of natural selection. So natural selection became their God. Darwinism is basically the creation myth for atheists minus God. Darwin was knighted. Yes, I believe so. One officer was professor of zoology at a prominent German university. Kellogg described him as one of the most brilliant of present-day biologists. And he wrote, Professor von Flussen, that was not his name, is a biologist, so am I. So he kept this man's name secret, right? So we talked out the biological argument for war. So the Germans were following a biological argument for war, and especially for this war. The captain professor has logically constructed argument. Why? So the captain professor has a logically constructed argument why, for the good of the world, there should be this war, and why, for the good of the world, the Germans should win it. So according to the atheists, and atheists need to have their noses rubbed in this, because we've been presented obviously a biased, propagandized form of history. If historians were honest, if academics were honest about Darwinism, Darwinism would be rejected for the filth that it is, for the depraved evil that it is. So for the good of the world, we need to kill a minimum of 16 million people in Europe in World War I, probably double that, easily 30 million. So the Germans must win it. They must win it completely and terribly. Professor von Flusen is neo-Darwinian, as are most German biologists and natural philosophers. That would mean scientists. The creed of the Allmacht, the omnipotence of a natural selection based on violent and fatal competitive struggle, is the gospel of the German intellectuals. So natural selection, Darwin's natural selection, is a violent, fatal, competitive struggle. And the Germans were simply applying Darwin's ideas to the letter, exactly as Darwin explained it. So struggle, bitter, ruthless struggle, is the rule among the different human groups. This struggle not only must go on, for that is the natural law, but it should go on, so that this natural law may work out in its cruel, inevitable way the salvation of the human species. So in other words, we're going to kill you for the good of everybody. We're going to murder entire populations. We are going to wipe out the Slavs. We're going to wipe out black people. We're going to wipe out the Jews. We're going to wipe out people we don't like because science, because atheistic science, because we found the truth. This is Darwinian. Remember we mentioned in the beginning that Darwin saw death brings perfection. It is a death cult. By its salvation is meant its desirable natural evolution. How is this natural if you're taking guns and bullets and murdering people? I don't see how that's natural, but according to them, that's science. That human group, which is in the most advanced evolutionary stage, is best and should, for the sake of the species, be preserved. Yeah, frightening. It should win in the struggle for existence, and this struggle should occur precisely that the various types may be tested, and the best not only preserved, but put in position to impose its kind of social organization on the others, or alternatively, to destroy them and replace them. These are frightening words. I hope you understand, and I hope you take screenshots of this. I hope you show this to atheists. I hope you speak about this, make memes of this, post this on social media. This is where atheism will take us. This is where it has taken us. Atheism leads to murder. It dehumanizes people. It devalues life. It causes nothing but death. This was not war. Atheists love to brag and boast atheism will end war because religion causes wars. No. Atheism explicitly requires death, genocide, for achieving its perfection. Natural evolution, Darwinian science calls for death. He goes on. The Darwinian science of World War I, right? This, he says, is the disheartening kind of argument that I faced. And that's written by Vernon Lyman Kellogg. And as you saw, it was written in this book, Headquarters Nights, here. And this is freely available on the internet to download by Vernon Kellogg. But atheists are so tolerant. No, these atheists would kill you. So now notice, I've quoted this before, but again, the support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail. This is Charles Darwin writing to Wilhelm Preyer in a letter in 1868. So, people might say, well, Lloyd, this is not what Darwin wanted. This is a corruption of Darwin's message. No, this is exactly applying Darwin's message to the letter. This is accurately presenting and acting upon Darwin. This religion of Darwinism that atheists love so much, this science, this very, very dirty science, this is where it gets you. So understand, this is no accident. Darwin knew exactly what they were doing. Darwin was feeding them this intellectual garbage, and these people were applying it, and Darwin was happy with that. It's the European scientific Islam. Yes, exactly. It's the supremacy of Islam. It's very much the same. We are supreme, and therefore we dominate others, and we kill them. It's jihad. So yes, this is Darwinian jihad. This is Darwinian scientific jihad. It's very little different. It's just clothed differently, but the same concept, the same idea. Yeah. Atheism taken to its logical conclusion, but they say Christianity is evil. Yes, this is atheism with the veil ripped off. That's just atheism with the veil ripped off. This is what it leads to. This is a man-made religion, and that's exactly that. And they will lie and lie. So understand, we've been fed a very false idea. That's super pagan. Yeah. Let me go back to that, right? So Darwin knows, wow, thank you, Sheikh Biardi. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's Darwinian Jihad. Yes, it's no different. Yeah, they always think they are the fittest. Yeah, everyone who's promoting this thinks they are the fittest, of course, and they deserve then to kill everyone else they don't like. That's why it's kill thy neighbor. The social Darwinism of World War II had a precursor in World War I. Initially a pacifist, Kellogg eventually campaigned for direct military US intervention. He wanted the US to go to war to stop these people, to stop the madness, right? To halt the rise of these ideologies. So as a pacifist, he changed his mind. He realized if we don't stop these people, they will eventually consume the world. By the end of the 19th century, Darwin's theory was increasingly popular among Germany's intellectual elite. Darwin had claimed that humans and other mammals were the product of what he called natural selection, which for him was a blind struggle for existence, where the fittest survived and reproduced, and the less fit died off. Now, that's a nice way to put it. They died off, but not naturally. They died off by bullets and bombs and mustard gas. This is how they were died off. They were volunteered for murder. They were volunteered for genocide. Understand? This is what they did in World War I. The Germans, yeah. The Romanians, yeah. The Romanies, yeah. The Gypsies. So Germany and the Ottoman Empire with the secret alliance for death, probably influenced by Darwin and other. Yeah, and Darwinism, as we saw, Darwinism and Islam, oddly enough, very interesting connection. Pretty much the same thing. Wasn't that weird? I mean, last week, like, huh? How is Darwinism and Islam giving the same message when Darwin is science and Islam is fiction? Right? This is Gnostic fiction by these Sufis like Rumi, and it's the same message. So how is this scientific when Darwin is just repeating 1,000-year-old Islamic Mohammedan, as he called it, Mohammedan evolution? There was a message I wanted to check above that I might have missed. It's getting cold here, believe me. It is getting cold. It's like 0 degrees Celsius here, which is like 30 degrees Fahrenheit, more or less. Yeah, there was a message that I saw that I missed. Okay, so yeah, atheism is tolerant until they become majority. Yes, like the communists, but that's exactly the same message that Islam pushes, right? Do you think they thought about who would be the next unfit group and how they succeeded? There's no way to reach perfection. Yeah, who is the next unfit group? Where does it stop, right? All these connections, no coincidence. Yeah, Simon said, it's just strange. Okay, so the less fit were killed off, right? According to those who deem themselves the most fit. In his book, The Descent of Man, Darwin made clear that his idea of natural selection had implications for human society. We've discussed this at length through the episodes. Charles Darwin was himself a social Darwinist. He believed that Darwinism must be applied to human societies. He worried that civilized societies, as we showed from his own quotes, civilized societies, modern man was harming humanity by helping the poor, by caring for the sick, and otherwise saving people that nature would have killed off. So he saw us as animals, we should just let the sick die, and of course this is a direct attack on the Christian doctrine of helping the poor and caring for the sick. And, you know, saving human life, because human life has value. Do you understand? So Darwinism is a direct attack on Christian doctrine, on Christianity. Darwin feared that humanitarianism could eventually destroy the human race. And we saw that the Nazis were pushing the same idea. Humanitarianism would destroy the race. And therefore, they needed to kill off those for the good of mankind, because they saw us as farm animals. Darwin had stated that in future, the civilized races of mankind would exterminate the inferior ones. So it's also a little bit of a wrap-up. I'm just reiterating some points from before. Now, in Germany, Darwin's ideas supplied a new generation of political leaders, social thinkers, and scientists, the cream of society back then, the elite of the day, with what they legitimately regarded as a biological justification for world domination. Do you think the Germans in World War I would have just stopped? You know, oh, we've got France, let's all go home, pack up our ball and go home. No. They believed they were entitled to dominate the world. They were the superior race. They were the ones on top. Therefore, they were entitled to your stuff. So Darwin gave them a biological justification for world domination. This is a religious motive just clothed in science. This is it's crazy as Islam, it's just crazy as any megalomaniacal human being has ever been. This is tyranny. This is despotism. This is evil in the shape of science. Remember, Darwin wrote, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Remember, the first genocide, utilizing Darwin's science, occurred 14 years after he wrote this, or rather 14 years after he published this. So Darwin's words here were put into effect within 14 years. Hundreds of thousands of people died. They wiped out 80% of a given race, right? And decades later, you had, of course, the First World War, which resulted in 20 to 30 million dead. So, yes, Darwin was a prophet, like Muhammad. There was death-bringing ideology in Nazi regime because they even, 1/4 of Jews, half Jew, So no stop in finding finding the fittest, exactly. Alone in the US in the 1950s earlier, some Christians wanted to ban Darwin and his works, but the school never, this is Darwinism. This is what academia doesn't want to tell you because they clearly support this. They support Darwin. They believe these things. And Darwin was evil. Darwin created evil. He opened the door to this scientific evil. So, killing for the good of humanity. So scientists of the late 19th and early 20th century promoted racism and even racial extermination. We saw that, how they actively promoted racism. Black people were monkeys to them. They were promoting gaining living space and competition. We saw this murderous competition that was fatal. The things that we now call social Darwinism. To repeat some quotes that I gave earlier, the war of annihilation is a natural law. It's a Darwinian law, without which the organic world could not continue to exist at all. In other words, we're just cleaning up. So this is German zoologist Gustav Jaeger in 1870. And again, for those who want this for the duration of this talk, I'll make this talk just $5. I would normally, this is nearly 150 slides, I'd normally make it like 25 according to the way that I was pricing it. So at the moment, I'm just selling it for 20% of the price. And please use it. Make memes, push this out there. Use screen captures, whatever you do, use this out there. Let people learn about this. Right? Hence the push for gender fluidity and puberty blockers by academics. Yeah, they're insane. Just as in nature, the struggle for existence is the moving principle of evolution and perfection. The struggle for existence, that phrase again. Also, in world history, the destruction of the weaker nations through the stronger is a postulate of progress. So the Germans murdered 16 million people because science demanded it. German ethnologist Friedrich Helwald in 1875. According to Darwin's theory, wars have always been of the greatest importance for the general progress of the human species. So World War II was a good thing. According to atheists, World War II, according to science, that beautiful science atheists love, murder is a great thing. Genocide that kills 70, 80, 100 million people, all for the best. It's just good for you. The physically weaker, the less intelligent, the morally lower must give place to the stronger. German biologist Heinrich Siegler in 1893. So Aaron Somerville says, I guess Genghis Khan should be revered as a saint in that case. Yes, Darwinists should worship him now. Atheists should go, well, yeah, this guy's doing exactly what Darwin said. Exactly. Pedro Jr. says, I remember a Nazi camp operator describing his job as an exterminator killing rats. Now, I know why he said what he said, because of Darwin. Yeah, they were just rats. Gates and cronies claim to help people of Africa by flying and giving jabs and leaving. Yeah, well, killing for the good sounds like the globalist handbook. Yes. So it helps the helpless. So this is Theodore Roosevelt. And he writes a foreword to Vernon Lyman Kellogg's book. He says, one of the most graphic pictures of the German attitude, the attitude which has rendered this war inevitable, is contained in Vernon Kellogg's Headquarters Nights. It is a convincing and an evidently truthful exposition of the shocking, the unspeakably dreadful moral and intellectual perversion of character which makes Germany at present a menace to the whole civilized world. The man who reads Kellogg's sketch and yet fails to see why we are at war and why we must accept no peace save that of overwhelming victory is neither a good American nor a true lover of mankind. Theodore Roosevelt. Sometimes you win fights by beating your enemy. I know that sounds unchristian, but sometimes to win, you actually have to beat your enemy. And sometimes you have to shoot them with the bullet. That can happen. That's called warfare because, rolling over and playing dead just gives them what they want, an easy kill. Yeah. So, vegetal asbestos. Yes, yes, yes. They saved us from global warming by murdering all those bisons. You're right. So there are actually people who make conspiracy videos about the vanished Tartarian Empire and fantasize about it like it was some progressive magical place. So yes, guys, so understand, this was written August 26th, 1917 by Theodore Roosevelt. So his book. So now the last two slides, you've seen this before. I originally meant these slides to become the final two slides, but I jumbled them up a bit in the previous episode. So last two slides, then I end this particular series, and I can do a preview of the next series that I'll be doing starting on Wednesday, which is Faith and Logic. So, among the defeated soldiers of German war machine was a young corporal in the Bavarian Army. You might recognize this guy here. He was very, very bitter at the defeat of Germany and its allies. And this corporal found new purpose for his life by even more fanatically than did the generals in World War I by embracing social Darwinism than did the Second Reich. He revived the Second Reich and he created the Third Reich. But atheists will say, we're not the same as them atheists. We have morals. No, they don't. They're no different. 91% of atheists are Darwinists. This is what they believe. This is the atheist alternative. So, no, atheists, you cannot trust them. They have no moral basis. So, and within 2 decades, of course, as you all know, the whole world, 2 decades after World War I, the whole world would know this corporal's name. And of course it doesn't play, and who knows why. Okay, so yeah, guys, I have no idea why that did not play, so give me a moment. I am not understanding why they're not playing, so I'm just going to go back to it. Okay, well, I played it last week, so it doesn't necessarily really matter. Let me see if I can find the original. Okay, no idea why not, but I played it last week, right? So as you know, Adolf Hitler wrote, "The law of selection exists in the world, and the stronger and healthier has received from nature the right to live. Woe to anyone who is weak, who does not stand his ground. He may not expect any help from anyone." I do want to try and fix this. I just have no idea why it is not working. That's become an image. I have no idea why it's not a video. It should have been a video. Okay, so basically this ends, apologies for the little flub here, but this ends our talk on Darwinism. World War I was a war fought in the name of Darwinism, in the name of atheist science. World War II was a continuation of those ideas, as we've seen. So, yeah, let me see if I can find this one. Actually, I will find it and I'll play it. Just give me a moment. Go to my content. Oops.
The corporal's name.
Great, no audio. Let me try again.
Among the defeated soldiers of the German war machine was a young corporal in the Bavarian Army. Intensely bitter at the defeat of Germany and its allies, the corporal found new purpose for his life by embracing an even more fanatical social Darwinism than that which had been adopted by the leaders of the Second Reich. Within 2 decades, the whole world would know the corporal's name.
Unser deutsches Volk siegt ein! Sieg 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 ein!
Sorry, I disabled my own audio while that was playing. I should not have done that. Sorry about that. Thanks, Lilo Mine, for the reminder. I appreciate it. And that corporal committed suicide in the end. Yes. So Darwinism attracted the worst of mankind. Darwinism attracted the most violent people. Darwin attracted people who had power and lots of bullets, armies. So I should have the audio back now. So this is where atheism has taken us. This is where the elite, we're talking about the social elite, the political elite, and the intellectual, scientific elite. This is where atheism takes us. They make beautiful claims, they talk about the utopia, and they will lead us straight off the cliff, and they will kill millions in the name of science and their utopia. So, yeah. So this is, hopefully you've learned something, and I hope you will use all this material. You know, you won't forget this. Nothing, so yeah. And as I said, this is available for the duration of this talk. I will make this available for... So that's the link to the video, by the way. That's the video that I was just playing now. And of course, this is available for $5. I'll leave this up during this presentation. Let me just... For those who want to get a copy of it. And let me go here. Thank you very much, Rick Hampstead. Thank you very much. Okay, so now who wants to see my... Yeah, so who wants to see the next series of slides that I'm busy building? Yeah, so I have a talk that I will be doing on Wednesday. So thanks, guys, very much for all the support. Thank you. I hope this has been useful. Would you guys like me to spend a few minutes, since I have some time available, talking about my next series, which is going to be... This is slide... So this is going to be what I call theological. Okay, so let me just go here. Anything opposing Jesus is satanic. And that's actually true. Definitionally, that is very, very true. Quinn Blessed, welcome. All right, so this is called theological. How Thomas Aquinas unlocked faith and reason. And there are 2 characters that are important here. Here's Thomas Aquinas on the left, Aristotle here on the right. All right. So this is going to be, but this is currently 100 slides. It's going to be longer. It's currently 100 slides. And this is going to be detailed. It's going to be deep. It's going to get technical, but I will be building up to this. All right. So I'll be taking you through philosophy, and I'll be taking us through Thomism, or what is also called scholasticism. But we're going to see and understand how biblical exegesis works. And we're going to contrast. You're going to see the deep contrast, the difference between a Catholic/Orthodox perspective on exegeting the Bible versus the Protestant. And you're going to see the complete divide between them, the difference, the mindset, how they see the world in a different way. So, Sheikh Khalifa, welcome. Do I have a series in the Ottoman Empire and its history? No, flying fish. I haven't done that yet. At some point I have to, because I need to talk about how the Ottomans funded and collaborated with Protestantism, with Protestants. So the Ottoman Caliph funded, armed, and provided intelligence and assistance to the Protestant movement. So yeah, there's a connection there. There's a very disturbing connection there. So this is something you have to understand this is a historical analysis, but also it's going to be a deep dive into philosophy. But I'm going to do it in a stepwise fashion that's going to be slowly progressive. So let's talk about this. The importance of the word. A language is well ordered when its words express reality with as little distortion and as little omission as possible. That's from Joseph Pieper, Abuse of Language, Abuse of Power, in his book. Which is why I make the deliberate choice to speak plainly. Now, logos. Now, I will describe logos in much detail later, but okay. Logos means the word, the divine reason that governs the universe. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We know that logos has many meanings, but one of its meanings is reason, logic, and the Word was God. So theologos, well, we'll get to that. Plato, and this of course here is Play-Doh. I've had an AI make Plato in 4 different figurines made of Play-Doh. Plato, who lived in the 4 centuries BC, had a serious dispute with the ancient Athenian sophists, who taught men to use very clever words in communication to deceive others with total disregard for the truth. And his issue was the corruption of language. So Plato condemned the sophists. He said that they were unscrupulous rhetoricians who used clever speech to deceive and not enlighten. To Plato, they corrupted the word. Remember, the word was with God and the word was God. And they corrupted the word. They corrupted the language. Though respected, the sophists taught intellectual dishonesty, moral relativism, not the truth. Plato warned that they were dangerous, as the unaware could follow their bad ideas. Truth, not verbal trickery, must be our foundation. And of course, verbal trickery, hiyal, is the Islamic concept for using verbal trickery. They call it legal trickery, but it's using words. That's why atheism is anti-science, because they are anti-logos. And yes, interesting to compare the Jewish versus Catholic method of biblical interpretation too. So theological, which is God-logical. Now, theology is a rational, systematic reflection on God and faith. Logical is reasoning or rational thinking. This refers to logical argumentation, evidence, and deduction. Theo is God or deity. This refers to the divine nature of theology. By the way, just so you know, when I go through these things, right, when I've got these numbers that you see here, what this means is that I have notes. These are all taken, these are all references to Catholic content, okay? This is going back to the Vatican's own sources, and I've got various sources throughout. So these numbers link to the pages, and of course this here are notes. So often I've got very detailed notes in my slides as well to add additional references or additional description. So Theo is God or deity, and this refers to the divine nature of theology, the study of God and God's revelation to humanity. So, and logical emphasizes reason and rationality in theology. We use human reasoning to comprehend and communicate truths about God. We use words. Again, we use words to communicate. And God, the Word is with God and the Word is God. The Word must be truth. If God is truth, then the Word is truth. Logic establishes coherence, clarity, and the continuity of theological arguments. It enables theologians to present sound theological propositions. And the word proposition has to be defined as well. I will define all of these terms as we go. It allows systematic organization of theological knowledge. So theology is not meant to be divorced from logic, at least according to the meaning in the word itself. Theological. Theological signifies that theology is not meant to be purely faith-based or emotional. I'm going to skip over some of this, and thank you, Michelle. I've not seen anyone share source material like Lloyd. Can't be called a liar. I appreciate that. Am I still cool with Thaddeus? Thaddeus has not spoken to me since the last stream we did on atheism. Of course, Mary has too many Bloody Marys, has been doing shows, and she's basically she's going against Mal, and she's using, I mean, she's talking about whatever she's talking about. I picked up an error that she made actually recently, which was interesting. She's been making claims, and she made a specific error, and they've made other errors. So we're just collecting those, and I'll be discussing those, you know. And yeah, so but I think there's a degree of upset over the Martin Luther talk that I did, and I will be doing more of that because it's factual, it's the truth. So yeah, let me continue here. So Dr. Norman Geisler, everyone knows he's not a Catholic. As a matter of fact, I find Aquinas' philosophy to be a helpful prolegomena or introduction for evangelical theology. After all, Aquinas defended metaphysical realism, the correspondence view of truth, propositional revelation, classical apologetics, and classical theism, all of which are helpful to defending the evangelical positions. Indeed, one has to search hard, if not in vain, to find an evangelical philosopher who can match Aquinas in these areas. That's Dr. Norman Geisler. So Mary does not like the ancient churches. So Geisler here is highlighting key philosophical and theological positions defended by Aquinas, metaphysical realism, that the world exists. Now, of course, apparently Luther was not a metaphysical realist, right? He was a nominalist, and that we'll discuss in the future. Correspondence view of truth. So the world exists as an objective reality. It's not a construction in your brain. The correspondence view of truth. Truth corresponds to facts. In other words, physical truth, metaphysical truth, theological truth must align. Because if God made the world, then God made the world in his image, which means that there's truth in the world, in the physical, and there's truth in the metaphysical, and there's truth in the theological. So these things must align. So a belief is true if it matches the way the world really is. What is Mary, a Lutheran? Ask yourself, why does Mary wear a turban? As that, you know, but that's a story for another day. So apparently someone said that the early church fathers are right when they're right and wrong when they're wrong. I'd love to get the timestamp and the link for that. But okay, so propositional revelation. God reveals truth through propositional statements. Now, it is a standard feature I've found, especially of Calvinists, but of Protestant theology, that they say, well, it's a problem when you start to use reason, because reason, it becomes empty materialism, and reason, you need to have faith. That is a bogus argument, because no one is making that claim. What they are saying is, don't use reason, because once you apply logic, reason, and the study of history, detailed history, to Protestant claims, our claims are, in French, bullshit, right? Irrational, illogical crap. That's what I think we're going to find out here. So God reveals truth through propositional statements. In other words, he speaks using words and he makes logical arguments, right? He says something is something. That is a philosophical, rational, logical argument. Therefore, we need to understand this so that we can understand, and so therefore we have to use logic. We have to understand how God works, how the word functions. Okay, so God makes declarative sentences and doctrines in the Bible. He doesn't just speak of mysticism, intuitions, feelings. We're not going to talk about Plato here very much. That was enough Plato. This is not a discussion on Plato. So classical apologetics focuses on arguments for God's existence. Are these irrational arguments? Are they, well, my feelings say? That is not an argument for the existence of God. So we provide historical evidence and logical arguments that address intellectual objections to the faith. And classical theism, the view that God's nature includes attributes of transcendence. He's beyond the world, right? There is mystery there. Immutability, God does not change. Eternality, existing outside of time. Impossibility, not subject to suffering or emotions. And simplicity, not composed of parts. Now, of course, we have to be careful of the vocabulary we're using because we're not necessarily all using the same dictionary, right? So how do you know when they're right and when they're wrong? Exactly. The answer is, church authority is what tells you. So scripture conveys propositional truth. Scripture conveys statements that imply truth. How do we know what is true, right? What can we infer from this to be true? So things that can be stated, affirmed, believed, or denied through propositional language. Scripture is more than poetry or symbolism. It makes truth claims. So look, when I do this, I'll go into much more detail and depth, right? So examples include a declarative sentence like Jesus is the Son of God. How do we prove this? Doctrinal summaries, the Ten Commandments. How do we prove these are valid? And logically connected propositions or doctrines, being God's attributes, imply other truths, right? So this is an interesting slide. I'll just play this page here. So, of course, the church teaches that God speaks to humanity in various ways, including through creation, through prophets, through wise people, wise men, sages, and the Holy Scriptures, sorry. So we must distinguish between public and private revelation. Public revelation refers to God revealing himself to humanity publicly, right? Expressed in the Old and New Testaments, right? God made himself known to humanity, culminating in the incarnation of Jesus, the birth of Jesus. Private revelations, on the other hand, are distinct from public revelation, and these are not necessary for salvation. They are personal experiences. Now, you might have a personal experience. This doesn't mean that this adds a new truth to what we have of the faith, to doctrine, nor does it place any obligation on the church. That is entirely your thing. If you're hearing voices, that's your thing. Scripture is considered complete already, and it does not need to be supplemented by later revelation. Scripture is complete. And of course, then along comes this fool here, this amateur, and he's telling us wrong because he had private revelation. He heard the secret testimony of the Spirit. Understand? So this man clearly, based on this definition here, is heretical. Now, of course, we need to talk about Martin Luther. Luther versus logic. And Luther tells us that reason is a whore. Yes, you heard that correctly. Reason is a whore, according to Martin Luther. Now, so of course, reason is the devil's greatest whore. That's a statement by good old Luther here, right? And he wrote this in the last sermon in Wittenberg. So in 1546, he gave his final sermon in Wittenberg, right? And it's on Romans 12:3. Romans 12:3 says, "For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, accordingly as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith." So of course he's speaking about faith alone, sola fide or sola fifis, as opposed to using reason. And Luther writes, "Throw dung in her face to make her ugly." And of course when he says dung, he means poop. So Luther, being a fair and balanced commentator, says, throw shit in reason's face, because that's what fair, balanced, reasonable people always say. Now, he writes 10 pages in this sermon, and the word reason is associated with whore 13 times, with Satan 9 times, with whoredom 6 times, and idolatry 3 times. Now, this, of course, is what upset Thaddeus' audience, and it upset Thaddeus. So, now, of course, Luther here does 2 or 3 times in the same paper, he mentions that, well, reason must be balanced by faith. Now, let's see, you've got 33 mentions or 32 mentions that he associates reason with poop once or twice, whoring 13 times, the Satan 9 times, whoredom 6 more times, and idolatry 3 times. So let me see, you've got 32, 33, 34 references to reason being satanic, prostitute, idolatry, and poop. And then he goes, and no, reason's very important. Reason's very, very important. Nonsense. That is what people want to, out of embarrassment, claim that Luther said. That's not what Luther said. They say, well, it's not what Luther said, it's what he meant. So whoredom must be balanced by faith. Yes, RGP. Are Protestants aware of this? No, of course not. Of course not. So he writes in German, dass die Vernunft des Teufels Hure ist. That reason is the devil's whore. And he says here, Teufels Braut, the devil's bride. So yeah, that's Luther. So let's have a look at this document. Oopsie. Let's actually have a look at this good old document here. So let's go to it. So this is going to be a long, detailed series, okay? This is going to be, I have to go slowly through this, but let's have a quick look-see here. Yeah, let's just go. Okay, bugger. The last sermon in Wittenberg, okay, January 17th, 1546. And he says, reason is the devil's bride. Reason, the lovely whore. She's an attractive, seductive whore. She's the foremost whore the devil has. So Luther clearly, what he's saying, it's not what he's writing, it's what he means. And what he means is that reason, what he means is that reason, you know, we need to use faith and coupled with reason, and the two must hold hand to hand. Or he's just saying that reason is Satan's whore, right? And the other gross sins can be seen, but nobody can control reason. Oh, he's calling reason a gross sin as well. I should add that to my list. I forgot to add poop. And yeah, it walks about, it cooks up fanaticism. Reason cooks up fanaticism. It claims that everything that pops into its head and the devil puts into its heart is the Holy Spirit. Yeah, that's the argument, definitely appealing to reason there. And what I say about the sin of lust applies also to reason, for reason mocks and affronts God. Using reason is an affront to God. I have finished 100 slides on this. I've done exactly, I think, 100 slides. I'm still busy working through some of the arguments. I'm busy refining because the examples, I need to improve upon them. What's Luther's definition of reason? Luther had his head up his ass. I think you can tell that. I don't think you need me to explain. Luther had his head right up his ass, as far as I can tell. The man was an idiot, a very dangerous idiot, but a bigoted, pompous ass. His definition of reason was, reason is the devil's whore. We need to use faith. Faith alone. Faith as defined by Luther. Feelings. So, an idolater. Reason is an idolater running after an idol. Okay? It has more hideous harlotry than any harlot. It's a worse prostitute than any prostitute. As a whore chaser runs after a harlot. See, people who want to use their minds are chasing whores. The scriptures call idolatry whoredom, while reason calls it wisdom and holiness. So reason lies about wisdom, you see, because I thought God was the Word, and I thought the Word is reason. So the prophets invade against this lovely whoredom, idolatry. So yeah, are you guys getting the feeling that Luther is here being reasonable, that he's applying a reasonable standard? He's showing us that, we need to couple faith. Are you getting the feeling that we need to couple faith and reason? The two must walk in harmony. Or he's saying, throw shit in her face. Excuse my French, but this is the man's language. This is what he said. And this upsets me. Okay? So I'll go through this again in the future. I mean, once I do a full talk on this. So, okay, when I do a full talk on this, I will cover this in greater depth. So let me continue here. I'm not sure that's a form of Christianity. It's Gnosticism. It's Gnosticism. It's Gnosticism with Christian characteristics, or Christianity with Gnostic characteristics. It is a blasphemy. It's a heresy. So not logical at all. See, this is Luther. Now ask yourself why this has not been made public. Why people don't talk about this. Okay. So let's continue here. Oopsie. So this, of course, these are screenshots I've taken from the actual document, right? The weird thing, it's all in Gothic German, not readily translated, or it's in Latin. Why haven't they translated it? Right? So let's continue. This might be interesting to you. The word Eleutherius, which effectively becomes a free thinker, right? Luther was a free thinker, and we know what atheists call themselves, free thinkers today. So language as possible rather than look up historical today. Still makes sense of that. Okay, so let's continue. Eleutheria is Greek for freedom. This became a central value in connection with Greek resistance to the Persians. Herodotus' history promoted the Greco-Persian wars defending freedom and law against despotism. So, the precise content and implications of Eleutheria and libertas, Latin for freedom, were always subject to discussion in the Greek and Roman world. But there was one clear standard definition of freedom since the time of Aristotle. According to this definition, freedom is equivalent to doing whatever you want, do whatever you will, do whatever you desire, follow your feelings. Right? Tohoti a boletai tesoe. Whatsoever a man wishes. So in other words, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. That is the satanic creed. That's the creed of the temple of Satan. Do what you will is the whole of the law. And this is what Luther believed. Libertas, quas propriam est vivere ut velis, liberty, the distinctive characteristic of which is to live precisely as you wish. I will do what I want. You can't tell me what to do. This sums up Luther because Luther changed his name. Now, this quote here is attributed to Seneca the Younger, the Roman philosopher and statesman. Sometimes it's attributed to Aristotle, but apparently it's Seneca the Younger. And he was a statesman, and he said, liberty, whose very nature is to live as you wish, do what you want. This freedom was frequently employed as the main slogan in political propaganda. Satanism, yes. Now, this is from a very, very famous dictionary of theology, right? So let me just see if I have the reference here. The Anchor Bible Dictionary by David Friedman. It's a 3,000-page book. Okay, so this is the Anchor Bible Dictionary, Luther's Theology in Historical Development. Okay, he writes here. Okay, let me start here. Two observations indicate that for Luther, the 95 Theses represented something extraordinary, even if the thesis against scholastic theology were more radical, because few people realize Martin Luther wrote the 97 Theses before the 95 Theses that he supposedly hammered on the door at Wittenberg. The 97 Theses are a rant against reason. It eventually came to be known as the Disputation Against Scholastic Theology, but it is a disputation against reason where Luther denies free will. So, even if these theses against scholastic theology were more radical, in the fall of 1517, Luther altered his surname, which till then was Luder. And lewd, have you heard the word lewd? Lewd is someone who's like a perv, okay? In English, the word lewd means perv, someone who's always trying to perv, look down women's tops, look up their skirts, looking through windows, peeping Tom, a lewd gesture, sexual, but perverted sexual. That's what lewd, and that's unfortunately the connotation of Luther's name. And he changed his name to Luther. And for a time, he used the name Eleutherius. Eleutherius meaning, I do what I want. You can't tell me. I do what I damn well please. Do you understand? This is where the Luther got his name. We just went through the meaning. So he then changes it in his letter to Albrecht of October 31, 1517. Eleutheros, free thinker. He wished to state that he was free of the fetters of scholastic theology. In other words, Luther was free of logic. Luther denied logic, didn't care for it at all. And also he says, inviting debate, he claims to speak in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. So Luther claimed to speak in the name of God. He claimed to be the voice of Christ. None of his other numerous disputations were introduced in such a fashion. However, we answer the question as to whether Luther was possessed of prophetic self-understanding. In the conflict over indulgences, he was certain that he represented the cause of Christ himself. So Luther couldn't make an error because he was talking in the name of God. Let's continue. So Luther was a Calvinist, and I'll go through this set of slides. I'll finish here. Luther was a Calvinist. Now, few people know about the 97 Theses. Before the 95 Theses of November 1517, in September he published the Manifesto of the New Reform Movement. This is according to Andrew Pettigee, Brand Luther, New York, 2015, page 51. So Luther published the Manifesto. Dr. Jonathan Gemmell, welcome. Hi, from New Zealand. Welcome. Good to see you. Free of logic. Luther was a madman. Yes. So he published, before the 95 Theses, right? He published the 97 Theses that almost no one knows about. This was the Manifesto of the New Reform Movement. So he was the reformer before Calvin. He started the Reform movement. It contained 97 theses on his radical views on salvation and human nature. It argued against Aristotle. It argued against Aquinas. It argued against scholastic theology. And it denied free will. Now, it became known as the Disputation Against Scholastic Theology. Martin Luther asserted sola fide, of course, faith alone. It was his definitive public refutation of scholasticism. And he says he denied that human free will can seek God, that human free will is not able to seek God. It is impossible for you to do so, nor can you act virtuously. You can only do evil. So he rejected the ideas that sinners could express God's grace through any action. Because of sin, he said, fallen humans have no desire for God and no desire to fulfill God's will. None whatsoever. So Luther was a Calvinist. So Luther rejected Aristotle's philosophy. He said he argued strongly against using Aristotle's ethical teachings and logic in theology. Aristotle taught that we become more just by practicing justice. We gain virtue by practicing virtue. Scholastic theologians integrated this idea with Christian theology, teaching that God allows us to exercise free will and that we do good works to practice and demonstrate virtue. Luther rejected this completely. He stated, and this is a statement I've seen Protestants say over and over, and I'm a Protestant, so what the heck? I've seen Protestants say this constantly. We do not become righteous by doing righteous deeds, but having been made righteous, we do righteous deeds. This, Luther writes, is in opposition to the philosophers. Now, when he says philosophers, yes, he means Thomas Aquinas, but he also means the Church Fathers. He is writing here in opposition. Now, don't forget, Calvin claimed historically that his philosophy was in line with, his theology was in line with the early Church Fathers, and the Catholic Church was deviant. That is false. That is a lie. Calvin was wrong or lying, or both. Luther makes the same claim. So he says, these are Luther's own words here. This is not me. This is his own words. So he's saying, your will does not exist. You cannot seek God. You are unable to seek God. You don't want to seek God. You only seek evil. He goes on to say, the will produces an act that is perverse and evil. So until you become one of the elect, until God one day reaches his hand down into the muck that is earth and massages your heart and cleans you out and gives you grace, prior to that, all you've ever done is practice evil. All you've ever wanted is to do evil. Everything you've ever done was for the sake of evil. Nothing you did is of virtue. Nothing you did was of glory to God. Nothing you did was good. That is the position Luther took. It is radical. It is anti-biblical. It is anti the history of Christianity. It is anti the Church Fathers. Understand, Luther is presented as a little mild, just like Darwin. It's all about the butterflies, you see? See, look here, this is Darwin, butterflies, beautiful butterflies, and these butterflies evolved. And that's Darwinism, but Darwinism is murder. By the same token, Luther was radical, incredibly radical, and incredibly stupid, yes. Luther was the world's stupidest theologian, right up there with Calvin. So, does this paint a different picture of Martin Luther? Hopefully I've given you some idea here. Martin Luther is not who they told you he was. So, why do we use reason, right? We have to give answers. We have to give apologia. It is our preference, and this is Friedrich Nietzsche here, Hitler's favorite philosopher. It is our preference that decides against Christianity, not argument. Some people are not open to reason. Now, this is the world's greatest atheist, right? Famous atheist, like Superman of atheism. And he says, our preference, our will, our emotions, our fifis decide against Christianity, not arguments. They're not interested in arguments. Now notice it says in 1 Peter 3:15, sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you. Don't tell him your feelings, give him a reason. Now, apologia is a verbal defense, a speech in defense. And biblically, if you look at the history of the word, the etymology of the Greek word, a reasoned statement or argument. So without knowledge, with knowledge comes the ability to articulate your faith and to refute objections, misunderstandings, or misrepresentations of Christian doctrine. So our faith, according to the way that the Aquinas and the Church Fathers prior, they felt that faith must be intellectually defensible, not just emotionally satisfying. Here, this guy's going for emotional satisfaction. And of course, Martin Luther pops up and reminds us that reason is a whore. Reason is poop. Reason is harlotry. Reason is paganism. Reason is whatever. That's Martin Luther. Okay, I'll skip forward a little bit. Has this been helpful and interesting so far? What have you learned from this? So we will talk about metaphysics. We'll talk about truth. And I will start defining lots and lots of things. So this is like, you can see right now it's 99 slides. Nominalism, I had to talk about Luther here. But this is all the discussion on... Okay, so a couple of things, like universities in the Middle Ages, right? We'll be talking about those. Monasteries, this is interesting history as well. Atheists love to talk about, well, atheism is reason, we're atheists and we're reasonable, and those Christians are irrational and those Christians are like, they're against science, and the Christians, they're against like logic, and we atheists, we just want to kill people with science, right? Thank you very much, Spiridon. Thank you. So monasteries, have a look at this. Universities, let me see if I should go back here. Okay, we'll go here. Metaphysics, no, not this slide. Skip metaphysics for now. Universities emerged in Italy. So Spiridon says, hold on. Thank you for your work, Lloyd. You're most welcome. Thank you. So emerging in Italy and Northern Europe by the 1200s, including France, many universities were founded by religious orders with ties to the church and by wealthy merchants as sponsors. They specialized fields of study developed at universities. And like medicine in Salerno, Italy, for instance, they specialized. So these are universities that are founded by the church, funded by the church, supported by the church, and yet they're going into medicine, not theology, right? Many graduates pursued careers, right, in the church. Now, monasteries were significant in education during the medieval period. The standard curriculum incorporated trivium, quadrivium, theology, law, and philosophy. Luther and Calvin were both lawyers. Now, the church sponsored universities, right? And this led to the spread of knowledge. And these universities spread and preserved texts like Plato, Aristotle, Herodotus, Tacitus, Hippocrates, Galen, Ptolemy, Euclid, Archimedes, Plotinus, that twit, and the Justinian Code. So I'm not seeing any atheists here, so maybe those atheists were busy being hypocrites somewhere. I don't know. Paris University was established in the 12th century, became significant in that field in Europe, right? Johannes de Sacrobosco wrote a 13th century book that was used to teach the heliocentric theory to students. The first chapter contains a clear description of the Earth as round. That's in the 13th century he wrote the book, and of course this is based on previous knowledge. The Sphaerae Mundi was required reading in Western Europe for the next 400 years. So, oddly enough, yeah, the atheists were just unfit, yeah. Bologna University, founded in 1088, is the oldest university in the Western world. Hold on, let me just go back here. Okay. So Bologna University was founded in 1088, the oldest university in the Western world, the oldest degree-awarding institution of higher learning. Notice the atheists haven't founded a single university so far. It's weird. Christians did it, those irrational Christians. So that is a subtle difference, Villeneuve says. Saved by the cross for free will, response good works, versus made righteous to yeah. No free will. Yeah. Well, Luther was irrational. Guy was a twit. Right. So now, okay, the term universitas was coined when Bologna University was founded. That's down here in Italy. So the oldest university in continuous operation is the Italian University of Bologna, founded in 1088, then Oxford in 1096. University of Salamanca in Spain, 1134, and then University of Paris between 1160 and 1250, and the University of Cambridge, 1209. Salamanca Catholic University offered, hold on, it's not Salamanca Atheist University. Where the heck are these atheists? Like these rational, reasonable people. I thought everyone was dragging their knuckles on the ground back then. So yeah, look, let me skip forward. So this is all Christian stuff, right? I go through this. We go through Thomas Aquinas. And we go through... so let's go through... the next page, I want to find non-contradictory logic. I just need to... just one more thing. Okay, so this is important. I'll do this last slide and we'll call it a night, guys. There are laws of non-contradictory logic, and we need to know these because these are the foundation of Western thinking and science. The atheist church was suppressed by the Catholics and the Orthodox. Okay. She just won the internet, guys. The atheist church was suppressed by the Catholics and the Orthodox. She won the internet tonight. Yes, the atheists were trying to be reasonable and the Catholics wouldn't let them be. They didn't have lesbian dancing degrees. Yeah, they didn't. They didn't do gender studies. Crazy stuff. Now, the three laws, the laws of non-contradictory logic, final slide, are also known as the three laws of thought. You have the law of identity. This law states that something is what it is, and it cannot be what it is not. It asserts that any statement or object is identical to itself. In symbolic logic, it can be represented as A is A man is a man, a woman is a woman, a cat is a cat is not an apple, a cat is not a dog. If we say this apple is red, we affirm the identity of the apple being red and not any other color. cat's not a dog, an apple is not an orange. We have the law of the excluded middle. This law suggests that a statement must be either true or false. There is no middle ground or third option. For any proposition, either it is true or its negation is true. Right? In symbolic logic, we have A or not A. For example, a woman is pregnant or not pregnant. She can't be a little bit pregnant. She is or she isn't. So this includes possibilities of intermediate states. And that's the sad thing, Kathy Hopkins. Reason is kryptonite to Protestantism, sadly. Once I go through this in step by step as I should, you'll understand it's seriously problematic. Then you have the law of non-contradiction. This law states that a proposition cannot be both true and false at the same time and in the same sense. It asserts that the contradictory statements cannot both be true. So how many sacraments are there? 7, 0, 1, 5, 2, 2.5, 3.2? There can only be one answer. Understand? In symbolic logic, it is represented as not A and not A. For example, if you say this apple is both red and not red, we have a contradiction because the apple cannot simultaneously possess and lack the attribute of being red. You can say it's red on one side and green on the other, but that's different. So these laws are the foundation of classical logic and are essential for reasoning and logical consistency in various fields like mathematics, philosophy, and science, repeatability. But a male can be pregnant, exactly. That's why you have identity politics. It's a direct attack on the law of identity. Identity politics directly attacks the basic foundation of logic, the first of these laws. Stefania Luna, welcome. So, yeah, so understand, we need to understand logic. Logic is critical. So, yeah, so guys, I will end here. Hopefully that was an interesting insight into Dr. Martin Luther, right? And remember, if anyone asks you about his last sermon in Wittenberg, don't forget that reason is a whore. Reason is the devil's bride. Throw dung, throw poop in reason's face. Gross sins can be seen, but nobody can control reason. Reason is a gross sin, but it's an invisible sin, right? Reason cooks up fanaticism. Reason is a lovely whore, the foremost whore the devil has, the devil's bride. As you can see, that's a very reasonable series of statements from Dr. Martin Luther. Yes, so, yeah. So guys, hopefully you've learned some great theology. Hopefully you've learned something useful. I should call it a night. And thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. On Wednesday, I'll start this. It's going to be slow. It's going to be detailed. I have to go through a lot of stuff to create a foundation for understanding reason. But you're going to find out that Martin Luther was a crazy nut job. And yeah, this is... Thank you very much, Dr. Jonathan Gemmell. Yeah, so guys, till next time, we'll see you soon. See you on Wednesday. Take care.